Alraai, die recording het begin. Laat waai.
Ja, maar dit lyk nie of daar nog mense join nie.
Nee wat. Daar kom gewoonlik so 2 minute, 3 minute na die tyd kom maar 'n paar by, maar die wat betyds is uh uh um moet die voordeel van betyds wees trek.
Ja. Okay. Let's get cracking then. Busy night. Let me get that out the way so I can see. Modulation methods. We're starting to dig into the technical. So we're going to have some fun tonight. Come on, give me slide. Okay. Modulation is the encoding transfer of information onto the carrier frequency by changing either the carrier's time, the carrier's amplitude, the carrier's frequency, or the carrier's phase, or any combination of the above. So important one. With modulation, I position the information that I want transferred via radio waves. I place that onto the carrier frequency. And I do that by changing one of those or a combination of these things: time, amplitude, frequency, phase, and we're going to go through all of them tonight. So the first one, and most probably the easiest one, is changing the carrier's time. And there's two ways in which I change the carrier's time. The first one is I switch the transmitter on and off. Typically, amateur radio call that Morse code or CW, continuous wave signal, where I switch the transmitter on and off at a specific rate. The second part of changing the time is I jump the frequency. So let's say I take an example. I'm transmitting at 10 megahertz. So for a short period of time, I transmit 10 megahertz, and then I jump to 11 megahertz, and then I jump back to 10 megahertz. So I only transmit one frequency at a time, but I jump between them. And that's normally in correlation with digital data that is coming from a computer that I do that. For example, the CW signal you can see there on the screen is the Morse code character S, Sierra, which is 3 DIRs, one after the other, spaced 1 DIR apart. So that's the character S out of interest, which you can see there on the screen. So changing carrier time, easy. I either switch on and off the transmitter, or I move the frequency of the transmitter for a short period of time between two fixed or set frequencies, FSK. Okay, so continuous wave frequency shift keying. If I look at it, the first page was in time. Now, if I look at it in frequency, you can see that I have a clear single line on my spectrum at the carrier frequency. So if I was doing CW, it means that this carrier would disappear. I'll only have noise, and then the carrier appears and it disappears again as I switch the transmitter on and off. If I was doing FSK, frequency shift keying, this carrier will still look the same as this, but it would jump. One moment it would be here on this line, for example, then it would jump back to this line on the spectrum. So it would jump between these two positions all the time while my transmitter is switched on. Okay, so that's modulation by changing the time of my carrier. Next one, I'm going to change the amplitude of my carrier, called amplitude modulation, like falling off a chair. So what I do, I've got a carrier signal, and I've got, let's say, audio, my voice, and I transfer or encode my voice onto the carrier by changing the amplitude of the carrier. So if you look at this, you'll see this variation in amplitude of my carrier is directly in line with my audio signal. Okay. Things that go wrong with amplitude modulation is people modulate too hard. So in other words, this part of the signal becomes a flat line. That creates distortion, and it creates poor quality and all sorts of other problems which I don't want. I know it's always a problem. People get upset with me, but the people coming from 27 megahertz typically like things which they call a power mic. These things overmodulate amplitude signals incredibly, and it causes spectrum spattering all over the place. So when I do amplitude modulation, I've got to make sure that this doesn't become a flat line. As this graph or as this picture is showing you, this has already reached the limit of modulation I can do of my carrier. Later, when we get transmitters, we will talk about what they call automatic level control. That is something that we use to avoid my audio of overmodulating my carrier signal. If I look at it in spectrum, you will see I have a carrier frequency. I have the information in the upper sideband, and I have the information in the lower sideband. If you think back of the lecture on mixers, what is the output of a mixer? It's the sum of the two frequencies, but also the difference of the two frequencies. And it's exactly what you see on the spectrum of an AM modulated signal. AM modulation is actually pretty bad because 2/3 of my energy that I'm radiating is sitting in the carrier. There's no information here. The carrier doesn't have any information embedded in it. The information lies in the sidebands. So I'm wasting 2/3 of my energy doing nothing. That's one of the typical problems with AM. The other thing that also goes wrong with AM, and I think it's one of the questions in the end of the chapter, the lower sideband and the upper sideband is mirrors of each other. Okay, so the information around my voice, sorry, let's go back. The information about my voice is in the upper sideband, but it's also duplicated in the lower sideband. So now you can start thinking for yourself. 2/3 of my energy is wasted in the carrier. So that leaves me with, what's it, 33% of my energy in the two sidebands. And because these is a mirror of each other, 50% is wasted as well. So again, I'm sitting with a very inefficient method of modulating a signal using amplitude modulation. Okay, is that clear? I hope crystal clear to everyone. So I'm just going back to this one quickly. If I overmodulate an AM signal, I get distortion, I get harmonics, which is not required, which is not needed, and it upsets other people in the band where I'm working. So I've got to make sure that I control my amplitude properly when I do amplitude modulation. 2/3 of my energy is wasted. It sits in the carrier, and then the remainder is 50-50 between upper and lower sideband. So a very inefficient method of modulation, but it exists. Okay. Then the clever guys decided to think of a solution. So one of the methods that they came up with of amplitude modulation is they call it double sideband suppressed carrier. So what they do is in the transmitter, they filter as much as possible of the carrier out. So in other words, now instead of wasting 2/3 of my energy here, I'm transferring my energy to my sidebands. But still, because this is a mirror of this side, 50% of whatever I'm transmitting is wasted because I've got a duplication of modulation. But I've got rid of the carrier, and the energy is then transferred into my sidebands. There is a question on double sideband suppressed carrier in the handbook, so read it carefully. What is double sideband suppressed carrier? Then the guys got even cleverer. They said, well, what else can we do? And they came up with a modern way of doing amplitude modulation, which they call single sideband. So what I do in my transmitter, I remove the carrier, which has already been done for the double sideband option. But I also remove one of the sidebands. I can normally decide either the lower sideband or the upper sideband, but I filter one of them out. So all my energy, everything is now radiated, transmitted in the sideband that I am putting through to the amplifier and the antenna. So a lot more efficient than anything else. The problem still is any of the modulation methods using amplitude modulation. So in other words, sideband, double sideband suppressed carrier, amplitude modulation, straightforward FM, CW, FSK, they are all prone to interference by either man-made noise or environmental noise. We'll still get to all the noise things that causes noise problems, but all the amplitude modulated modulations are prone to interference and poor quality when the noise goes up. Just something to remember. So although it's good, it's easy, and we'll get to a summary table later, it is prone to effects from either man or the environment. Okay, so that's the different ways of manipulating the amplitude of my signal. Now we go to the next one, and we're going to manipulate the frequency of my carrier. So again, I've got my carrier frequency, and I've got an audio signal that I want to encode or impose or transfer to my carrier frequency. So what I do is I change the frequency of my carrier proportional to my modulation frequency. So if you look carefully, you'll see here when my audio signal has reached a peak, the frequency is sitting at its highest. Then it starts getting lower, lower, lower again. And when my audio signal has reached a minimum trough, my frequency, carrier frequency, is also dropped to the lowest possible, or it's dropped in frequency. Let me put it that way rather. Okay. So that's modulating the carrier frequency with my audio. I change the frequency of my carrier. If we look at it on a spectrum, it is actually very efficient because all my energy is being used in the spectrum. So all these components of my transmission, they carry information. Each one of them carries a bit of information around what I'm modulating it with. So it's very easy. It is generally the bandwidth being used by FM is greater than the bandwidth being used by an amplitude modulated signal. I just want to go back to this one. Let's just go back and show you something. Okay. So typically, if I transmit a single sideband signal, if this is the position where my carrier would be, and my radio allows me to transmit 3 kilohertz of audio bandwidth. It means that this signal's bandwidth that it occupies in the spectrum will be 3 kilohertz wide. Okay. So whatever my modulating frequency is, if I add it to the carrier, that will give me an indication of what my bandwidth is. So on SSB, it is quite efficient. We're sitting with the bandwidth of the audio, and if it's 3 kilohertz, that will be 3 kilohertz bandwidth. If we just go here quickly, I just want to show you this one. Because this is CW or FSK, this is typically less than 100 hertz of bandwidth that we're using. So this is obviously bandwidth-wise incredibly efficient. Our amplitude modulated signal SSB is also fairly efficient, but it's more than CW or FSK. If I now go to FM, you can already see here that I've got about 12 kilohertz, 12 kilohertz of bandwidth that I occupy with my FM signal. So that's 4 times the bandwidth that I occupy with an SSB signal. But FM is not really prone to interference or interferingable. So your FM signal can vary in amplitude. It can tolerate a lot of environmental factors. It can tolerate a lot of human factors that causes interference. And you will still get crystal clear audio quality coming out of an FM modulated signal. So although it uses more bandwidth, the quality of the modulation is a lot better than your amplitude modulated methods. Okay, then last one, I'm just picking time. Last one we call phase shift keying. Interesting one, if you can make out the graph. This is typically also used only for digital modes, not really used for voice transmission. So what happens is every time, and those of you should know by now, computers operates on Boolean logic. So in other words, it's only got 2 states, a 1 or a 0. So when my computer transmits a 1, my carrier frequency will be in that position. If it changes to a 0, my carrier is shifted by 180 degrees. There's a wobble, like hitting a speed bump in the road. It hits a wobble and it moves the carrier frequency by 180 degrees. Okay. It delays it and moves it. Then I go back to 1 again and it moves it again 180 degrees. And this is what happens every time there's a change from a logic level 1 to a logic level 0. My carrier frequency jumps in phase. Now, the one that you see here They typically call it two-phase PSK or 180 degrees PSK. You also get four-phase PSK, which is 90 degrees, and eight-phase PSK, which is 45 degrees. But most our amateur radio, sorry, I'm just switching off the 2 meter. Most our amateur radio PSK usage for digital modes is around the two-phase or the 180 degrees phase shift when I change logic level. So I'm only going to show you the 180 degree one. Again, if I look at the spectrum bandwidth usage is incredibly low. It is a very efficient way of doing digital transmission because it doesn't eat a lot of bandwidth. Okay, then the last one, the animal. We call it quadrature amplitude modulation, QAM. This is now combining amplitude modulation. It's combining phase shift modulation. It combines it into one modulation method or modulation output. So if I look at this example, put on the screen for you. So in other words, if my digital data is represented by these digits, I will have my normal carrier. Okay. If one of those digits change, and you can work this pattern out yourself, and you'll see if the last pattern changes, the amplitude halves. And when that becomes a 1 again, the amplitude goes back to normal. So that's doing amplitude modulation on the carrier every time that bit changes. And then the other two bits you will see gives me phase shift modulation every time. There's a phase shift that occurs when these bits change every single time. Not really well used in digital communications, but a lot of the equipment that we use in our civilian life makes use of QAM or a variation thereof. There's quite a lot of variations on it. But just out of your interest, it is a combination of amplitude and phase modulation, and it is in your textbook. That's why I've put it up for you. It's perhaps difficult to grasp, but if you understand phase modulation and you understand amplitude modulation, then you should be able to figure out what is going on this horrible graph that I call the animal.
But Wi-Fi works on it.
Yes, I know, but a variation of it.
Yeah, no, it is it gets very technical on
Yes.
the end of the day.
So I'm not going to draw you maps on the modulation. This is enough
No,
for
I watched a
amateur
10-minute video on all of this, and I already got lost in just like
Yes.
the first quarter. That's how quickly the modulations can kick you around if you're going to go deep into it.
Yeah, so that paragraph, and I think there was a sample question on it as well. The big thing just to remember is with QAM, I'm combining amplitude and phase modulation together to give me more, the option to transfer more information than what I would have been able to with either just phase or just amplitude modulation. Okay, so if we summarize modulations, it's I've tried to stick to what is in your book. So if I change the carrier time, CW and FSK, it is very efficient. It uses simple electronics. It's got a low bandwidth, and it's got a high immunity to interference. Okay. Carrier amplitude, where we've got AM, double sideband suppressed carrier, and single sideband. It is a very low efficiency modulation method. Electronics is medium in complexity, and the bandwidth can be high in the case of AM compared to low bandwidth in the case of SSB. And it's got a poor immunity to interference. We look at carrier frequency, FM modulation. It's got a high efficiency, got fairly complex electronics. It uses high bandwidth, but it's got a very high immunity to interference. Phase modulation, PSK. It's got a very high efficiency. It uses complex electronics, low bandwidth, and it's got a high immunity to interference. So you can already see now, if you start looking at QAM, what is the good things out of PSK and what's the good things out of AM, and if you combine them, you end up with high efficiency, complex electronics, medium bandwidth, low immunity system. Okay, that's modulation. I don't know if there's any questions while I take a sip of coffee. Okay, let's carry on. Now we're getting to another interesting one. It's out of place in your book, according to me, but let's stick to where it is so that you know about it. It's the whole topic of error correction when I'm doing digital modes in amateur radio. So I'm saying transmitted data is prone to errors. Error correction is the combination of methods, principles used to detect and correct errors in the received data. So in other words, I type on my keyboard in my ham shack, it gets sent by radio to somebody else, other side of the world, other side of city, doesn't matter. He receives the data on his radio and garbage appears on his computer screen. So error correction is what we use to fix it so that we don't have to keep on repeating ourselves. It's like a telephone conversation. When they can't hear you, people will tell you, please say again, repeat that. I can't hear that, say again. With error correction, we're avoiding that by using methods to fix it as it happens. And we're going to look at CRC, cyclic redundancy checks. We're going to look at forward error correction. We're going to look at error correcting code. We're going to look at acknowledgement and retransmission. These are all in your manual, and there's some questions on it that I've asked at the end of the chapter for you. Okay, so let's start. The first part I call CRC, cyclic redundancy check. And to try and explain it the best possible, I'm going to use Checkers 60 Minutes as an example, because I think everybody uses Checkers 60 Minutes somewhere along the line. Okay. If I order stuff from Checkers, the motorbike arrives at my gate, and the first thing I do is I take the brown paper bags from the driver and I check, is the bag sealed? Is the bag torn? Is there a sign of leaking moisture in the bag? And if I'm happy with the contents of the bag, I can tell the driver to carry on and go back to Checkers for the next delivery. That's pretty much what CRC does. It doesn't check the contents of the package. It checks the condition of the package. Okay, so what I do is on the transmission side, I take my data And depending on the software I use, the software mathematically calculates a CRC for me, a checksum, which gets added to the data and it gets transmitted around the world to the other side of the city. The receiver then strips off the CRC and it puts it through the same mathematical equation or polynomial, as they call it on the graph, and it checks if all the data has arrived and it seems to be in order. That's all it does. It checks the package. Package left the sender in a certain way with certain characteristics, and the receiver checks if what he received is everything that left the transmitter or the sender. That's what CRC does. It's all it does. The next part
No,
of the equation, we
it doesn't add
start.
like a check bit. It doesn't add
Sorry?
like a check bit to make sure it fits all, like a verification with a check bit that it adds onto it.
In the
An
amateur
extra
radio
byte.
ones, in the amateur radio ones, not really. It's just to
Okay.
check some
Okay.
comparison.
Yeah.
Okay, now we dig into our Checker 6060 parcels to determine what is missing. So when I create my data packet, before it goes for CRC, I use what they call a forward error correction encoder. It's a mathematical method by which the data is taken, the contents of the data, the contents of the parcel is taken, and mathematically it calculates a new set of data, which is then going to be transmitted. Okay. So I take the original data, I calculate some, let's call it correction codes, fixing, fudging factors, whatever you want to call this. But mathematically, it recreates the data, including a lot of other information with it. It adds the CRC, and it is transmitted to the other side. The receiver strips the CRC to check that what left here is exactly what is received here. Remember, CRC doesn't check for the correctness of the data. It only checks that what left here is actually what is received here. So it strips the CRC, and if it's happy, it puts it through to a decoder, which then mathematically recreates the data. If anything is corrupted in the data, the forward error correction decoder is able to recreate the data from what it's received. It can recreate the data so that it doesn't have to keep on asking, please resend, please resend, please resend. Okay. So this decoder has the ability to fix errors on the fly so that the data that is output to my computer screen is exactly what left on this side. So if I typed on this side, the best hobby in the world is amateur radio, on the screen on the other side of the world, it will come out amateur radio is the best hobby in the world. Because the decoder is able to fix missing or corrupted data automatically without asking retransmission. Then the last part, which you have to know, is the way this encoder and decoder works. There's various mathematical methods which is used to create that forward error correction information, or to repackage the data, including forward error correction. These are some of the codes or the methods that they use. The amateur radio software typically uses Hamming codes. So it's some clever guy that lived in the 40s, and he came up with a mathematical way taking data, repackaging it, and if something is wrong on the other side, he can recreate or reconstruct the data from what he's received. So amateur radio is mostly using Hamming codes, but there's some other ways, some other clever guys that also came up with methods to work out the forward error correction codes for you. Okay, so if we just step back now again. So I've got this mathematical model, amateur radio, Hamming codes, and this sits inside the FEC encoder. So my data goes into the FEC encoder. It uses Hamming code to then repackage the data so that I can add the CRC, sends it to the other side, strip the CRC to make sure that what I received is what left here in terms of the amount of data. And using the Hamming code decoder, the data is reconstructed, recovered, or displayed then on this side. And this is the principle most amateur radio communication works on. Okay, it's a mouthful, but it is in your manual. And when you start playing with things like FT8 and RTTY and Olivia and all these wonderful world stuff we do with radios, then hopefully this will come back to you in that moment. Then just the last part of data, which is need to know. Okay, so now I've constructed my packet of data as per the previous pages, and I'm sending it to the other side of the world. The other side of the world checks the CRC. If the CRC is fine, it acknowledges back to this side to say, I've received the data, I'm happy with it. Okay. I then sent the second bit of data, or the second lot of data around the world. But at that exact point in time, the neighbor started welding his new garage carport, and my receiver didn't receive the data. So after a certain timeout period, my computer will retransmit that same data again until it gets an acknowledgement from the other side to say, I am happy, I have received the data. So acknowledgement and retransmission, you will find is also 1 or 2 paragraphs in your manual. Okay, that's the bits on data transmission. Any questions?
Very similar to TCP/IP.
Yeah, not as complex, a lot less complex, but similar, yes.
Yeah, no, there's a lot of similarity that comes along with it, is what I'm trying to say.
But people that don't work with TCP/IP, this will be Greek.
Yeah.
Will be Greek.
No, I'm just coming from that world, so I know that's why I'm saying it.
Yeah. Okay, shall we move on? Let's see, what's the time? Yeah, it's already 1938. Okay. Chapter 22, transmitters. That's the fun part. Okay. The purpose of a transmitter is to generate a on-frequency signal containing the modulated audio or data can be applied to the antenna. So we've looked at modulation. So I've created my modulated signal, I've amplified it, and I've put it onto the antenna for transmission to the world. It's exactly what a transmitter is supposed to do. So it can either be audio from a microphone, could be data from your computer, but I've modulated my carrier and I've amplified my carrier so that it is able to transmit onto the antenna. That's what a transmitter does. This should look familiar. We're back with CW, continuous wave. modulation. This is what a typical block diagram for a CW transmitter looks like. I have an oscillator and I have a buffer and I have a power amplifier and an antenna. So what I do is I switch the signal coming from the oscillator, I switch that on and off with a Morse code key. Every time I close this key, the oscillator signal goes to the power amplifier, goes to the antenna, and it transmits. I open the Morse code key, it stops transmitting, and there is no signal going to the antenna. Remember, CW, it's on, off, on, off, on, off. The same with FSK, which was also a time carrier modulation. I have two oscillators, right? And depending on if I have a 0 or a 1, I select either oscillator 1 or I select oscillator 2, and the output of whichever oscillator I've selected, and I'm just going to back here then, that would go into the power amplifier to the antenna. So both of them are fairly straightforward and easy transmitters to make. This one has just got two oscillators. The other one has got one oscillator. You will see on this one, I don't key the oscillator. I don't know when you did oscillators if you covered the topic, but any oscillator has got a stabilization time. So in other words, if I apply power to my oscillator, it will take a certain time period to stabilize, to become stable, to go on to go on frequency and stay on frequency where it was designed to operate. So typically, any radio transmitter, you would never switch off your oscillator. If you want very high stable oscillators, they even have little ovens that heats it up to, well, that depends, but roughly in the order of about 80 degrees, 60 to 80 degrees, sometimes even higher, depending on the oscillator. But they heat it up in an oven so that it is at the best stable possible frequency. So that's why you never switch an oscillator. You always switch the rest of your electronics. Okay, if we go to AM modulation, if you think back of what we said, again, I've got an oscillator that will always be running. I've got a modulator. Okay. I've got some audio amplifier which amplifies my microphone. I then mix the oscillator and the amplifier signals together. It goes to two amplifiers. Sometimes the buffer and the power amp can be the same, but it could be two separate amplifiers. And it goes through a filter to the antenna. The reason for the modulator, if you go back to our mixer lecture, output of a mixer gives me the sum of two frequencies and the difference of two frequencies. This is where my two sidebands and my carrier comes from the modulator. Okay. All transmitters, doesn't matter if it is CW, if it is AM, FM, all of them will always have a low pass filter. If you go back to our lecture on multipliers, we said for a multiplier to work properly, I actually need to distort the sine wave. I need to make the sine wave dirty for the multiplier to multiply beautifully or properly. And what happens is a lot of that garbage ends up going all the way through to the end, which I need to get rid of. And then depending on the type of amplifier I use and the level of modulation, I could have some interference frequencies which I need to make sure does not reach my antenna. So even if the drawings don't always show a filter, transmitters generally always have filters. Even FM transmitters have filters. Okay, now we go to SSB. If we now think back, again, I've got an oscillator, I've got a balanced modulator, and I've got an audio signal. So what comes out here? I've got 3 frequencies coming out here. Got the balance, or the sum of the frequencies, I've got the difference of the frequencies, and I've got the carrier. So now I use a very sharp filter, in this case a crystal filter, to remove the sideband and the carrier because I don't want it. Right. I'll put it through a mixer again to up the frequency even further, and again I'll put it through a filter so that the only thing coming out this side of the filter is my sideband, either the upper sideband or the lower sideband. That's all that must come out of this filter into the amplifier and into my antenna. So you can see the complexity of the electronics is increasing as we're moving further and further along the chain. So I'm just putting this one back up again. As you can see, this I need to get rid of with filters so that only this part reaches the antenna or the amplifier. It can either be this one or it can be that one. Sometimes we would pass the lower sideband and we filter the carrier in the upper sideband, and sometimes it's the inverse where we keep the upper and we filter out the lower sideband. FM transmitters, again, I've got an audio amplifier and I've got a filter. One of the things with FM, it does not like DC signals. So I try and make sure that any very low frequency components is filtered out before it reaches the modulator. The other thing with the FM modulator to also consider, and there's ways in which it gets fixed, but the amount of deviation or the amount of frequency change is also influenced by the frequency of my voice or my modulated signal. And this is one of the reasons why FM transmitters, they'll always have a high pass filter so that the lower frequency components of your voice does not reach the FM modulator. It's got an oscillator. It's got a frequency multiplier that takes it up to the desired frequency, and I've got a power amplifier and a filter, which is not shown here. But that's an FM transmitter. Just bear in mind, and I think it is in one of the questions, there is something around the linearity of FM modulation. The amount of frequency change in an FM modulator or FM transmitter is also influenced by the frequency of my audio signal. Yeah, what they do in radio is they have something which they call pre-emphasis and de-emphasis, which is not in the manual, and I'm not going to go into detail with it. But I use pre-emphasis when I modulate to get rid of the nonlinearity, and I use de-emphasis to demodulate to get rid of the nonlinearity. Okay. Now, amplifiers, if we go back here, all transmitters have an amplifier. I mean, that's how we get the energy to the antenna. I can't connect the battery to the antenna, and I need a bit of oomph to get the electromagnetic wave into the inner sphere to propagate to wherever I need it to be. So I need a bit of power. So that's why all transmitters have power amplifiers. And what I've done is over years, you get different classes of amplifiers. You get A, B, C, and AB, which is a combination of these two. There's also class E, which is not in your manual, so I'm not going to spend time on that one. But typically for amplitude modulated signals, we would use class A amplifiers, or in some cases a class AB, but most of the times it's a class A. And for FM modulation, we would use a class C amplifier. Or nowadays, most of the modern radios use class E, which is LD MOS, which is very similar to C. It's just even more efficient. Okay, so if we just look at the differences between them so that get an idea. A class A amplifier is always drawing current from my power supply, always. For the full duration of transmission, it is drawing current. Okay? Efficiency is really not wonderful. 25 to 50%, 50% if you're lucky, but it's generally poor. Okay? There is generally no distortion on a class A amplifier, and because let's say it's 50% efficient. If I put 100 watts of energy into my antenna, right, it means that my power transistors, the semiconductors in my amplifier, needs to dissipate 100 watts in energy or in heat. So they become incredibly hot during transmission, because half of the energy consumed by the amplifier is wasted as heat into the heatsink. Okay, only 50% reaches the antenna. It conducts always. Then I just want to go to class AB because that's an interesting one for AM. What you can see is here the efficiency is the efficiency is very good, or it's better than a class A amplifier. It's still not wonderful. So let's say it's 75% efficient, and I put 100 watts into the antenna. 50 watts needs to be dissipated in the transistors and the heat sinking for it. Okay. The disadvantage of it is that it is prone to distorting my signal, which means that the quality of my audio on the other side of reception is not as good as a class A amplifier. So this is sort of a trade-off to try and improve the wastage of energy, but still give you good transmission. And then if we look at class C, efficiency is very high. Now, typically around about 80 or 90%. So very little heat is dissipated in power transistors, and distortion is normally very high. But now, if we go, I just want to let me go to the next one for you, and it may make a bit more sense. Okay. If I'm using amplitude modulation and there's distortion on my signal, it's going to directly affect the quality of my audio, because the information of my voice is captured on the carrier in the amplitude variation of the carrier. So as my voice goes up and down, the carrier goes up and down. So if I have distortion of the carrier, it's going to directly influence the quality of the audio. I look at FM modulation, the information is captured in the frequency variation. So even if my distortion is as bad as this orange graph, okay, even if it's that bad, it doesn't matter, because the information of my audio is not captured in the amplitude of the signal, it's captured in the frequency variation of the signal. I hope that makes sense. So if we go back here, they say on a Class C amplifier, distortion is at its highest. Yes, it's correct. Distortion is very high. But because I'm using it for FM, it doesn't affect the quality of my FM, because the information lies in my frequency change and not in my amplitude change. Okay, I hope that makes sense. So LD MOS, they've even gone further with the modern radios, but in your manuals is A, B, and C. So I hope this summary will help you when you read that part of your manual. And then this also hopefully makes a bit of sense to you. So if I do an amplitude modulated signal, I want a good sine wave. I want a good, beautiful looking sine wave because that affects the fidelity of my audio. But if I do FM, the beautiness or the quality of the sine wave doesn't affect the audio quality because the information lies in the frequency. So if we look at transmitter summary then, all modern transmitters have common blocks, automatic level control, and I'm going to show you automatic level control after this page. It's got a low pass output filter, so that I can get rid of the second, third, fourth, fifth, blah, 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 20th harmonic, which may be amplified and it may be trying to head down the coax cable to my antenna. It's also got antenna protection. Let me put it to you this way. We'll discuss, I think Pierre is going to discuss it with you, but if I take a torch and I shine it at night into the bushveld, 100% of my light goes into the bush. Nothing comes back at me. Okay. If I stand with that same high brightness torch in front of a mirror and I shine it into the mirror, all that light is going to be reflected back at me and it's going to injure or it's going to blind my eyes. Okay, so when we do antennas and that, you'll cover it, but it's important for your antenna not to reflect power back, because power reflected back injures or damages your amplifier. So all modern transmitters have antenna protection. They've obviously got a power amplifier, and the days of the old dial radios is gone. So all modern radios now, you've got phase lock loops that do your signal generation to generate all the different frequencies for you that you need in the radio. Okay, so now if we go to this one, this is what I wanted to show you. Can't stop now. Oh. Okay. I'm gonna stop. Okay, you'll see there's a thing that comes up here that says ALC. Now, ALC, the automatic level control, if I exceed that red line, my radio's transmitter is actually going to distort. It's going to create some other problems for me. And I should always control my modulating signal so that my ALC does not exceed the threshold. Now you'll see this guy is busy transmitting digital data on 14074. While he's transmitting, while that goes to TX, you'll see how little bandwidth the signal is actually occupying. I don't like the ALC this high for digital modes. I want it lower, but for now, let's say it is within the boundaries of the red line. But you can see when this goes into transmit, the spectrum that is transmitting is minute compared to the receive spectrum. See how little spectrum he's using when he's transmitting. And his ALC is not exceeding the threshold. I don't think it gives, yeah, it tells me he's running at about 7 watts or something like that. And here is my reflection of my antenna. So this is a bloody good antenna. It's not giving any reflection back to the transmitter. Otherwise, it would have shown up on the graph when he's transmitting. Let's just go back. You see, SWR, there's nothing there. So it's a beautiful antenna that this guy's got. Okay, that's transmitters. Did we make it? Yes, exactly 8 o'clock. Henry?
Yes. Nee, ek sien jy's vinnig, Johan. Nee, baie interessant man, baie interessant. Enige iemand enige vrae?
Nie spesifiek aan my kant nie. Maar het is interessant om te sien hoe dit die IT-wêreld bymekaar kom ook.
Johan, hierdie is jou iCom se live feed, nee.
Nee, hierdie is maar net 'n prentjie wat ek gesoek het tot ek een gekry het.
O,
Archief wat ek seker.
Ja, ek het maar net 'n GIF gesoek want ek wou vir julle gewys het hoe lyk 'n transmitter, moderne transmitter se beeld wat jy sien terwyl hy besig is om te transmit.
Ja, die waterval diagram.
Ja.
Onder andere ook.
Ja, as ons donderdag ontvangers doen, gaan ons weer terugkom na hierdie toe. Dan sal ons van die receive goeders behandel. Donderdag is receivers.
Maar ja, nee, jy dit maak altyd om hoe AM en FM te vergelyk is om eintlik te kyk hoe hy die frekwensie sinusgolf verander. Andersins, ja. It doesn't help that much. Ja.
Right, as alles gesê is wat gesê moet word, dan gaan ek die recording stop.
Ja, ek is basies klaar, Henry.
OK, ek stop die recording, nou sê.